So today we're going to do some more Rostermania news, and there is some big news to get to. A lot of big teams filling their rosters, a potential super team forming as well. Let's dive into it. But just before we dive into the Rostermania news, let's first talk about a team that isn't making any roster changes, and that's Team Heretics. And let me tell you about Team Heretics. They've got a coach called Neil Zinho. And Neil Zinho is one of the best coaches in the world. Well, would you like to learn about Valorant from one of the best coaches in the world? Well, have I got news for you, because the Gosu Academy are running a 10-day bootcamp with 4 classes being run by Neil Zinho himself. Now, the other classes will be run by other experts, including maybe even one by myself as well. And in this bootcamp, you're going to learn about a wide array of topics in Valorant, from anti-stratting, strat book adaptations. I'm going to do one about util efficiency use. So it's really going to cover basically everything you could want to know about high-level Valorant. Now, the course runs from October 19th to the 28th, and don't worry if you can't make all of the sessions, because they all will be recorded as VODs for you to go back later and look at. And don't worry if you missed out on the early bird offer last week, because if you sign up this week, you're going to get access to one of the most mind-blowing theory classes from all of the past bootcamps, which is Thinking Like a Master of War by the former Fnatic strategist Anders. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with Anders' work, and you'll get free access to this entire VOD as well, learning how Anders thinks about the game. So go and sign up before this Sunday to get access to that free Anders class as well, and go and join the bootcamp today, because it's going to be a great time and you can learn from some of the greatest Valorant minds and myself and improve your Valorant skill. But now let's dive into the Rostermania, and we'll start here with Americas, and thanks to the people at the ValoComp subreddit for making this, because again, this is just reports and announcements. But continuing from where I left off, Jorgamo to G2 is the first one we need to talk about. And that will make G2's roster this: Valen, Jorgamo, Trent, Jonah, and Leaf. And obviously, it's a pretty good team. Obviously, G2 were pretty good last season anyway. You add in Jorgamo, obviously a very good duelist, into that mix. And really, this is a team that now should be looking at, competing. Obviously, for G2, it's going to be very, very interesting because, of course, they're an Ascension team. So if they don't make champs, well, then they're going to be playing in Ascension. If they don't finish in the top 8, well, then they're just going to be straight relegated. So, look, on paper, this should be a team that, you're expecting to, make champs, basically, and, stay in the league. But is it possible that, things don't go that well and, maybe they end up having to play in Ascension? Yeah, that's a possibility, right? Like, for this team, and I know that would be strange, and you'd probably think, like, this team would win the Ascension tournament. They shouldn't have too much problem with that if that did happen to them. But it certainly will be, a high pressure, basically, for G2, because not only there's the expectation on them to win, but they kind of need to. I do think that this team will be pretty good. The one kind of thing is, Jorgamo, obviously a very aggressive player. The rest of G2 are kind of known to be, a little more passive, maybe in general, a little slower than maybe Jorgamo, but I think that that's possibly something that's going to make them better. In certain moments, can maybe take the initiative and, win some rounds for G2 that maybe they weren't winning last season. Okay, next one here is Aspas exploring options outside Lev. Now, we already knew that this was kind of happening, but basically, it's kind of like Aspas isn't going to play for Lev, essentially. And, the rumor was that he was going to go to Bleed, of course, but then Bleed on in VCT, so he's not going to Bleed. And no one knows where he is going to go now, and it's a strange one, and I haven't heard any rumors of where he potentially might go. So yeah, we'll have to see where he goes, but it doesn't look like he's going to play for Lev, and it will be interesting to see who's going to pick up Aspas, because of course it's Aspas. Someone will probably want him. I see obviously left G2 to make way for Jorgamo. Rossi to C9. Let's talk about C9. So C9 made a bunch of moves, and they ended up with this roster here: Rossi, Zeppa, Vic, Moose, and Oxy. Obviously, the important thing, obviously, for them really was keeping Oxy. Of course, he's kind of their star player. Rossi coming over from Pacific did pretty well, I thought, last year, and Vic as well, coming from Tier 2. Moose I thought was pretty decent. Obviously, Zeppa's been there forever at this point. But they'll be like middle of the pack. It's kind of where C9, I think, just kind of are living right now, essentially, and that's where I expect them to stay. Okay, moving on to Narrate and Bang join Sentinels. Let's talk about Sen City. So here is your Sentinels team: John QT, Narrate, Bang, Zelsis, Zekken. This is the team. It's a pretty good team. Narrate is a very good player, as we saw all of last season on Karmine Core. So I think that's probably an upgrade over Sassy, to be honest. Bang, obviously just a straight kind of controller swap for 10s. Maybe gives them a bit more flexibility, honestly, than 10s would, you know, especially with the Astra buff. This is kind of like a side grade, I would say. But overall, I mean, look, if you look at Americas and where Americas is right now, I don't think there's that many big time threats, to be honest. You know, looking at it right now, they're in a pretty good spot, because I don't think the rest of Americas is in a great spot, to be honest. So they should be looking to, you know, really kick on. They've got the same coach, they got the same core, of course. You're adding 2, you know, pretty good players in there. Yeah, things look pretty good for Sam. Okay, next up, Adverso and Mazzino. So Mazzino obviously going back to KRÜ. Adverso, if you recognize this name, it's because he used to be on Leviathan. He was also playing in America's Ascension, and I think look pretty good, and they are going to KRÜ. So this is the KRÜ roster, and this is the question that me and Elevated on our podcast yesterday had, is that we don't know who they're not gonna have. Right, we've got Melsa, Kesner, MTA, Shy. Heat, you know, is inactive and won't be playing for them. But then you've just added Averso and Mazzino, so you've added 2 players, so someone's got to go. Right, you would assume, obviously, it's not going to be Kesnet. I would say it's probably not going to be Shy. It's probably going to be one of MTA or Melsa. I guess MTA is probably the most likely, to be honest. I thought Adverso looked really good in the America's Ascension, so I'm glad to see him back in Tier 1. Mazzino obviously had a pretty good season overall last year on Lev. It looks pretty decent, I'm not going to lie. I think this should be a pretty decent team. Okay, next one, Xander to 100 Thieves. Let's talk about the Thieves. So here's their team, of course. Now it's Boostio, Xander, Cryo, EU, Asuna. Obviously, the only replacement here has been Xander in for Bang. But yeah, this will be an interesting team to see. Obviously, 100 Thieves are a weird team because, of course, they have shown you last season that they can play like one of the best teams in the world, right? They had that kind of running into Master Shanghai where they looked incredible for a moment. It'll be interesting to see. I think if the meta falls right for this team, I think if they end in a good groove here, that, you know, things could turn out pretty good for them. Going to be quite a lot of neon, so you know that might create some problems. You know, with Cryo, you assume that Asuna would be the one probably on this team playing a neon, which means that Cryo might have to, you know, flex onto other roles. You know, there still should be some hope here because they have shown that they can be insanely good. Okay, let's move to EMEA and let's start with the big news, which is Les and Durka to Vitality. So this, it seems like, would end up being their team, which is Sender, Trex, Safe, Les, and Durka, with Kicks going, Runners already gone. And this is a crazy team. You know, if this is the team that, you know, they're rolling out, this is a crazy team. And I think if you're looking at the top of EMEA, you know, like I was saying for Sentinels, like it kind of feels like Americas is somewhat open for Sentinels to just kind of like be the best team, at least at the start of the season. In EMEA, it's going to be tough, right? Because obviously you're expecting Fnatic, that they're going to be thinking we're the best team. Obviously Heretics are going to be running it back and thinking we're going to be the best team. And now you've got Vitality as well, who with this roster, they're not just playing for second place. You know, this is a roster that is looking to win tournaments. Whoever the coach is, because we don't know the coach either. Oh, wait, actually, I think we do. I think it's the old TSM coach. But that is a tough ask. You know, you're going to have to really manage this because the expectations will be through the roof, not just from the outside, but probably internally as well. But this should make EMEA very interesting, adding in, I mean, this is, you know, like, Super Team gets, you know, bandied around a lot, but I mean, look at the names on here, right? This is, right? Like, this is the 2023 Fnatic stuff, right? We've got an IGL, and then Trex, one of the best, you know, players in slot. Safe, one of the best players in slot. Les, one of the best players in slot. Durka, one of the best players in slot, right? Like, that's a super team. That is an actual super team. So if they don't perform, it's going to be pretty bad. Okay, with that said, let's now talk about KOI, because Flyer has joined KOI, and Solcas and Filu as well are going to KOI. So this would end up being the KOI roster. Camo, we'll get to in a second, but is gone. I think it's going to be Grobinho, Shados, Solcas, Filu, Flyer. They're also adding in Gorilla, who was the Vitality coach, to be their coach as well, it's been reported. So an interesting team. You know, Solcas obviously coming from Apex and from Tier 2. Filu is also a Tier 2 player who I think was playing for Desire from Italy. And Flyer obviously from NA Tier 2. Yeah, this is an interesting an interesting roster. You know, last season with KRÜ, I was like, this team, you know, I'm not sure how much this team can really do. This one I have a bit more hope for. I think that this one should be, you know, competitive, and we'll have to see. Again, will they be reaching the heights of, you know, making an international? Probably not, but I think that they could be, you know, decent at least. Okay, next up, let's do this. Camo, Kamek, and Patitek all going to Team Liquid. And so this essentially would be our team. We're going to have Nets, who I think would be IGLing on this team. Hiko. Camo, I assume, would be playing Duelist. Kamek, who obviously was Fnatic sub in 2023 and was on Job Life last season. And Patitek, who obviously was Team Heretic sub last season. Now, this to me, again, for Team Liquid, I kind of expressed this on the podcast yesterday. I think that Riot, thinking about Team Liquid, you know, they're obviously one of the bigger orgs in the EMEA, you know, kind of one of the prestige orgs, you might say. And in the first season of partnership, you know, it really felt like Team Liquid were going in, right? We're gonna try and be the best team in the world, is what it felt like Team Liquid were doing. I personally don't think that this is a roster that is built to try and be the best team in the world. You know, they'll probably be okay, but I don't think that this is a team that's expecting to win tournaments. Okay, and now on to Pacific, and we'll start here with DFM basically letting almost all of their team go. And so that leaves DFM with just 2 players left, Mai and Seth. See a lot of Japanese tier 2 teams go down the, you know, road of kind of 3 Japanese, 2 Korean players. That might be a decent idea here for DFM as well, because there's some good Korean players out there who you potentially could get and really turn this team into something that could actually do quite a bit of damage. But let's get to some big news here. Munchkin, Lakia, and Meteor are free agents. And so that means that the Gen G team currently is just Texture and Karen. Now, I will say that it does not necessarily mean that they've been released. It seems more like a situation where their contracts ran out for the other 3 players of Gen G, and that they might just re-sign them anyway, right? That this isn't necessarily, you know, they're gone. However, it did seem like that happened with Texture as well, but they re-signed Texture. Now, maybe that was just a priority thing, and they will get to those other players as well. Munchkin apparently announced that, you know, he's not a free agent anymore. Maybe they will try and find some new players. Who knows? I was Gen G. If I was in charge, I think you definitely want to get Munchkin back. I think that is like a must, literal must. You must sign Munchkin. If you don't, you are trolling. Meteor, I think, is like, I would personally say re-sign him, right? His performance level last year was very, very good. And the chances of you finding someone better, you know, you might be able to, but I would say it's unlikely for this team and what this team wants. And you know that he's good in your system. So I would say re-sign him. Lakia is one where I think you could probably say, like, especially with some of the players out there, maybe there is an upgrade possible here. And I think that this just makes more sense. If you're Gen G, I think you would want to make one change, right? Don't make multiple changes from this team. But speaking about letting people go, let's talk about another Korean team. Foxy9 and Bane are restricted free agent, and Buzz leaves DRX. So DRX, what on earth are you doing? The 2 players that they've kept, it seems, are Flashback and Mako. Now, Foxy and Bane being let go, I thought, you know, like, these are both, in my opinion, like, tier 1 level players, right? They're both players that I think fit in tier 1. Letting go of Buzz, I think, is a mistake. Obviously, now it's just Mako left from kind of the initial team. To me, I would have said, let's run back Buzz with Mako, and okay, if you want to keep Flashback, that's fine. And if you want to, you know, replace these 2 and try and find upgrades if you think they're out there, okay, that I can live with that. I don't really understand getting rid of Buzz. I know that Buzz sometimes isn't maybe as consistent as you would like all the time, but he's very good, and some other team is going to pick him up, and he's going to be a problem. We'll see what they're cooking here, DRX. I am a little wary though of this decision. I worry for them.